A very good morning to you. Glad that you could join us on AM Live. My name is Olive Burrows, and as is our custom, we get the youthful perspective on current affairs. This morning, we'll be looking at failure to launch the stalled bipartisan talks, with Azimio saying that after Ramadan, they will return to the streets, to the people, citing contempt and bad faith from the Kenya Kwanza administration. The Kenya Kwanza administration, on the other side, has accused them of threats and blackmail. But who is blackmailing? Who is the conversation we'll be having this morning? But first, the top stories, and I wish I was starting on a lighter note, but yesterday a teacher at the Sacred Heart Mukumbo Girls High School was in the county of Kakamega was reported as having died at the Life Care Hospital in Eldoret, where she'd been admitted after developing symptoms similar to those of 3 learners at the school who lost their lives earlier. Doctors at the hospital say the teacher succumbed to multiple organ failure. NTV's Lois Wangui kicks us off on AM Live this morning.
The late Juliana Mujema passed on at around 6 p.m. this evening. The teacher arrived at Life Care Hospital Eldoret in an ambulance yesterday and would immediately be put on intensive care unit until she breathed her last. She was taken ill on 2nd of this month.
My sister was a healthy lady going about her business until 2nd of this month, when she started developing symptoms akin to sweating, fever. I interrogated the doctor by then, the doctor who was attending to her at that time, and he said that this could arise from various issues, including toxins probably that could have been imbibed from either water or food.
Medics here say this English literature teacher suffered multiple organ injuries, which would later translate to multiple organ failure, subsequently shutting her life.
She came with acute renal failure and acute liver failure.
So first thing we did is we try to resuscitate her. We were giving her fluids and vasopressor support. So it took us almost 2 to 3 hours to stabilize her.
Apart from the severely damaged liver and kidney, Mujema would also suffer heavy bleeding. Doctors embarked on a blood transfusion, and by the time of her demise, she had received 8 pints of blood.
It is going towards more of acute gastroenteritis. That means it's something they eat or they drink. It was done by that.
The medics here inform us that the infection the late teacher suffered is similar to the one that has so far claimed the lives of 3 school girls at Mukumbo Girls High School.
Patient had acute gastroenteritis, then that caused her severe dehydration, which led to acute kidney injury. After the kidney shut down, then there was a liver injury also. The patient went into multi-organ failure.
Deceased lived with her 6-year-old niece at Mukumbo Girls compound, and the minor is currently fighting for her life at Kenyatta National Hospital with similar symptoms. She leaves behind a husband and 2 children. In the meantime, the administration of the Sacred Heart Mukumbo Girls High School has since written to the Parents Association, summoning them to a meeting on the 17th of April, perhaps to deliberate further on these now deadly matters. Lois Wangui, NTV, in the county of Uasin Gishu.
Meanwhile, Mukuni Boys High School in Chuka Sub-County in the county of Tharaka Nithi has been closed down following an outbreak of a disease with cholera-like symptoms. Tharaka Nithi County Director of Education, Bridget Wambua, said that more than 40 students have been taken to Chuka County Referral Hospital and Chuka Nursing Home, complaining of stomachache, diarrhea, and vomiting. In the county of Meru, more than 100 students from Kahaga Boys High School are receiving treatment at Nairobi Women's Hospital Meru branch, suffering from coughing, chest pains, and fever. What could be going on? NTV's Margaret Kimathi with more.
Mukumbo High School in Tharaka Nithi County now joins the list of schools where learners have been admitted in hospital exhibiting cholera-like symptoms. The students began complaining of stomachache and vomiting last week. Public health officials visited the school and took water and food samples for testing. The students say their troubles began after feasting on a school cow slaughtered by the management.
Watatu wakalazwa hospitali, lakini mmoja tayari amekuwa discharged na akaenda nyumbani. Vile hiyo shida iliendelea, ikawa ni kama imeaffect karibu wanafunzi 40. Shule ilikaa chini na ikaona ya kwamba ni vizuri hao watoto waachiliwe ili waende nyumbani.
The school principal has denied claims, saying that the meat was procured from external supplier.
Kuna ujenzi wa barabara unaendelea na mifereji ni kama ilikuwa ingine imekatwa na ikakuwa reconnected, na wanda ikawa maji ilikuwa contaminated. Lakini kwa sasa tunangojea watu wa public health ili wakapate kupatia ripoti kamili.
In Meru County, unconfirmed number of students from Kaga Boys High School are receiving treatment at Nairobi Women's Hospital Meru branch after being diagnosed with complications such as coughing, chest pains and fever. The County Director of Public Health, Paul Kimathi, said a team had been dispatched to the school to collect samples. According to Kimathi, since 1st of April this year up to date, more than 100 students from the same school have received treatment at Nairobi Women's Hospital without public health being notified. Until the time of compiling this story, no teacher or hospital management had agreed to talk to journalists. According to the Kanithi County Director of Education, Bridget Wambua, Mukooni High School will be reopened on May 9th. Margaret Kimathi, NTV.
Residents of Kapenguria in the county of West Pokot stormed a police station, forcibly took out a suspect in custody, beating him to death before setting his body ablaze. The residents accused the police of failing to prosecute the suspect, who is said to have been a serial offender. Meanwhile, Chief Justice Martha Koome has called on the police to foster a close working relationship with members of the public in order to improve service delivery.
Business was disrupted in Makutano Trading Center after an angry mob stormed into the Makutano police post, forcibly taking a suspect, beating him to death, and thereafter setting his remains on fire.
Wananchi walishika mtu ambaye anasemekana ni suspect ya wizi wa pikipiki.
Efforts to quell the irate mob were rendered futile after the crowd failed to disperse, despite the police lobbing tear gas and shooting into the air as they tried to transfer the suspect to another police station. 3 police officers were injured during the scuffle, with some losing their valuables.
Karibu 50 meters kutoka police station ya katika police post yetu ya Makutano, walipiga mawe hiyo mtu hadi akafa.
The suspect is said to have killed a Form 2 student and dumped his body in Cherangani. The residents say they chose to take action into their hands following the rise in criminal activity within the area. The police say they are investigating allegations that the murdered suspect was a member of a criminal gang, as they called on residents to desist from taking action into their hands. The body of the deceased is being preserved at the Kapenguria Referral Hospital. Meanwhile, Chief Justice Martha Koome has Ruth Sarmoi, NTV.
All right, feeding into our conversation this morning, Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party will resume its nationwide anti-government protests that will run parallel to any talks that the opposition will have with Kenya Kwanza. And coalition leader Raila Odinga says the demonstrations, which will start upon the conclusion of the holy month of Ramadan, are a result of what he called the government's non-commitment to the bipartisan talks. With that report is Ibrahim Karanja.
The meeting with civil society organizations, trade unions, as well as university student leaders saw the airing of perceived shortfalls of the Kenya Kwanza regime, with a rallying call that a return to the streets is the only language the government will hear.
That a government can say that they cannot pay their workers, Our government is telling workers to tighten their belts. A government that cannot pay our workers has no business being on the throne.
We are not begging for help. Help is a right for every student. Ututengea hata kama ni Friday tuendelee na maandamano yetu.
Negotiation ikienda uambie ya kwamba inaenda jioni. Sisi tunaandamana kutoka asubuhi mpaka saa 11, then munaenda negotiation jioni.
And when the Azimio leader stood to give his response,
lakini mimi nakubaliana na pendekezo ambayo imetoka hapa siku ya leo. Ati mazungumzo endelee. Mazungumzo endelee na maandamano sambamba. Dawa ya moto ni? Dawa ya moto ni?
How do you prefix dialogue with a denial in the first place? Denial that this is it, we are not on it, and we can only discuss IEBC reconstitution. That's what makes me think they are not serious.
Tunangoja Ramadhani ishi. Ramadhani kisha namna hii tutatangaza. Tutatangaza. Na mtaitika. Mtaitika.
The meeting at the Ufungamano House that was also attended by ex-IEBC Commissioner Irene Masit saw Azimio give details of how Odinga's votes were allegedly stolen in favor of President William Ruto. The opposition alleging that this was the actual results in the IEBC servers, different from what was declared at Bomas of Kenya.
If you have 3 or 4, we give you just 4, and for 200 we give to Ruto. Even if you have 200, we give you 0, and the 200 we give to Ruto.
We are therefore saying, do not ask us whether the whistleblower is accurate. Do not ask us whether our information is accurate. The responsibility to keep records is not ours. It belongs to a body we pay called the IEBC. Open the servers and the truth will be known once and for all.
But they can come with live bullets. They can come with bombs. We will go and confront them in the name of the Lord and the God of Kenya.
The declaration that talks with Kenya Kwanza will now be running parallel as people continue with anti-government protests in the streets. The bipartisan talks have officially entered slippery grounds, seeing that President Ruto's condition for these talks was an end to the demonstrations. Ibrahim Karanja, NTV, Nairobi.
Azimio members of the bipartisan committee meant to resolve the opposition grievances say that have accused the Kenya Kwanza side of a lack of commitment. Joint chairperson, and that is Ochiende Amolo, has disclosed that there is no line of contact to the Kenya Kwanza side despite forming their team. This latest move has stalled the commencement of the mandate of the committee.
We reiterate our readiness and commitment to the process, but decry the delay exhibited by our Kenya Kwanza counterparts. We note the delay in naming the 7 members of the team, and up to now, note that they have not named the co-chair, leaving us at a loss as to whom to engage. We have appointed the following as assisting counsel. First, Professor Makau Mutua, and second, Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. 3, we have appointed Advocate Paul Mwangi to act as Joint Secretary.
From the other side, a section of Kenya Kwanza legislators have fired a warning shot to their counterparts in the opposition that the committee appointed to lead their side in the bipartisan dialogue will not sit to discuss issues that cannot be handled in Parliament. Led by Kiharu Member of Parliament, Ndindi Nyoro, the MPs maintained that top on their agenda is reviving the economy.
Sasa leo nimeona hawa watu ya NASA, wale watu ya kurusha mawe, wana propose members, wanaita ati joint secretary na wengine advisors. We are not going to take the Kenyan people into another useless route of another PPI or governance like those.
Na serikali ni moja, Kenya. Moja na lazima muombe rais aweze kutimiza ahadi zenye aliambia Wakenya. Hiyo ndio ya muhimu. Hii ingine watakaa venye wanakaanga.
Muandamane Monday, mwandamane Tuesday, mwandamane Wednesday, mwandamane Thursday, mwandamane Friday, msumkate hakuna.
Kwa hivyo Raila Odinga, ujue unadanganywa na Martha Karua na unadanganywa na Kalonzo Musyoka, kwa sababu wao wenyewe hawafanyi maandamano kwao nyumbani. Martha Karua hafanyi maandamano Kirinyaga, na yeye Kalonzo Musyoka hafanyi maandamano kwao pale Ukambani.
The National Assembly Committee on Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Affairs has decried the plight of Kenya's diplomatic attaches abroad, saying they're living in deplorable conditions. The committee chairperson, Nelson Koech, raised the issue before Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Alfred Mutua, who'd been summoned to explain actions taken by the ministry to remedy the situation. Here is NTV's Ngina Kiruri with the highlights.
As the country wrestles with a cash crisis affecting civil servants, government institutions abroad have not been spared, with ambassadors being the latest casualties. The issue was raised by the chair of the National Assembly Committee on Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Affairs, Nelson Koech, who said he learnt of the plight of ambassadors when he visited Belgium and Germany, with a number of others from different countries raising similar concerns.
Our attaches abroad have not been paid for the last 6 months. Some of them have been threatened for eviction. In confidence, it's very difficult for a person who is living outside the country to stay 6 months without a pay, and it puts this country in a very bad space outside. It's not fair at all.
In response, Mutua blamed historical debt ranging from the Jomo Kenyatta and Moi era on the country's current economic difficulties. He also lamented that different attaches being paid under different departments, such as the Ministry of Interior, further complicates matters.
Delays in disbursement. As you know, this country is facing a lot of weighty challenges because of the high debt. We went into a binge period of borrowing without care to the world. A lot of these loans, some of them that were borrowed even during the days of Jomo Kenyatta, Daniel Arap Moi, Mwai Kibaki, actually majority of them are coming into fruition now, this year. Mfanyikazi wa immigration, you are posted in Japan. Huyu wa Ministry of Foreign Affairs ameshalipwa yake. Immigration, Interior hawajamulipa. You know that that policy that has been taken. Now I'm bringing it all together. I'm saying let all the monies come to Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Also on the agenda was the issue of the Cabinet Secretary in a communique directing all diplomatic and international organizations to communicate directly with ministries and agencies without going through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Apart from the CS snubbing the summons by the committee 4 times prior to today's sitting, the committee had also taken issue with Mutua, requesting that meetings and requests that involve more than one ministry be made through the office of the Deputy President.
Instead of dealing with the bureaucracy of fast-tracking these issues, where are we delegating what is already delegated to you?
Isn't this not going to damage our reputation as a country? That ni mambo ya sokoni, it's like a marketplace. Anybody can go in and...
Because what has happened is that the Europeans, the Americans, the developed countries have realized that if you cut the bureaucracy, business moves faster. So what we are introducing here is not only in Kenya, it is now becoming the standard in the world, in terms of best standards in the world.
I'm not persuaded. This team is still not persuaded that that was the right thing for you to have done. And of course, it was an executive order, but we believe we can still persuade the executive.
The committee says it will soon visit embassies abroad to visit attaches, some of whom are living in deplorable conditions, to compile the report. Ngina Kiruri, NTV.
Okay, it's about that time when we get into the dailies, and I will be analyzing them with the following people who are already in studio. With me in studio, we have Nelly Chepkemoi, ODM youth leader. She's also an educationist, so I'm curious what she makes of this spate of illnesses in schools. Mundalo M. Advice, National Youth Chairman, Jubilee Party, and not last, because ASCON is still pending, but Omulo Junior, a Director of Political Affairs, ANC. Good to have you guys in studio. What we're discussing this morning is this: failure to launch the stalled bipartisan talks. And I had asked on Twitter yesterday, we just find that text, here we go. Doomed to fail, accusations of threats and blackmail from Kenya Kwanza and actions and utterances taken as contemptuous and in bad faith by Azimio. It has been a not so promising start to the proposed bipartisan talks. I'm curious whether my panelists agree or disagree. Is there reason to hope? Okay, Daily Nation front page, and I have to say the dailies today, despite being a Friday in the lead up to the weekend, brought it, to use a colloquial term. And this is what the Daily Nation has in store for us. Eldoret firm in eye of 10 billion shilling fertilizer probe, Financial Reporting Center and Central Bank combing through firm's activities after winning multi-billion shilling tender to supply subsidized fertilizer to the Kenya National Trading Corporation. Company has raised eyebrows with large and unexplained cash withdrawals and seemingly altered documents supporting big money transactions. And there's a figure that's been cited here on the front page, and that is 320 million. Barely 3 weeks after the contract was signed, Mashambani received a part payment from KNTC. Shortly afterwards, the firm sent over 320 million shillings to an individual identified as Alfred Rono. Kenya, will we ever move forward with these kinds of stories? Raila's blunder, Karua running mate intrigues. So this is a sampling of that book penned by Raila's chief agent in the last presidential election that was in August of 2022. And I'll show you the editorial cartoon on the star in a little bit, but it's literally beans spilling out, spilt beans. Opposition leader Raila Odinga reportedly became dismissive of concerns about possible electoral fraud after he was allegedly made comfortable with assurances of a win because the state machinery would ensure his victory was not snatched. His chief agent in the polls, Mr. Saitabao Ole Kanchori, has said in his tell-all book, Why Baba is Not the Fifth. Mr. Kanchori has also laid bare the intrigues that led to the naming of Ms. Martha Karua as Mr. Odinga's running mate. He reveals that Mr. Odinga defied then President Uhuru Kenyatta in picking her. And here we go. At the bottom here, Mashogu releases list of top schools in 2022 KCSE. Education CS Ezekiel Machogu yesterday released finer details of the 2022 KCSE exam results as he defended his ministry against claims that there was massive cheating, insisting that the candidates deserve the results they got. More on that on the back page of the Daily Nation. When I flip to this side, another bombshell. I don't trust Ruto. An image here of the lady being quoted, and she's the UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, and she's said to have told Antonio Guterres that President William Ruto is, quote, ruthless, and that she does not trust him, according to Pentagon leaks. I do not trust Ruto, top UN official says in leaked papers. And when I scroll further down, I see the big story on the Standard, and that is Azimio to resume mass action after Ramadan. Thank you. Citing intransigence from Kenya Kwanza, opposition has vowed to launch anti-government protests to run parallel with bipartisan talks. Let's take a look at the Standard since I mentioned it, and we'll come back to the other publications that originate where we are, and that is at the Nation Center. Let us see. It's back to the streets. Opposition chief Raila Odinga warns that anti-government demos could resume as early as next week as Azimio leaders seek to pile pressure on government through protests to run concurrently with bipartisan talks. Here they've itemized what they're calling the Ufungamano notes. One, return of demonstrations after Ramadan to run concurrently with bipartisan talks. Two, Azimio to hold town hall forums and public rallies to report on progress of talks. 3, Azimio claims Kenya Kwanza is not serious on talks, decry inclusion of Canaan in team. 4, Azimio insists Raila won presidential election, wants an audit of election servers. And 5, demands overhaul of Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission election reforms. And a quote here from Raila Odinga, when he accepted the olive branch that was preferred to him by William Ruto. We are not doing this because of any weakness on our side. We are only doing this because Kenya is bigger than all of us, and that is why we want to engage. At the very top here, I see health cover for hustlers at 17 shillings. I've also seen it on the ticker of Business Daily. Government to roll out health insurance stemming from Hustler Fund via 17 shilling daily deductions, plans education policy. Alarm. Again, I have seen this. This should be the top story on the Business Daily. Alarm as dollar surges again. Dollar buyers pay up to 140 shillings per unit in banking halls in spite of market intervention. And actually, the top story on the Business Daily talks about what could be behind the dollar shortage and some mischievousness reportedly at play. Okay, let us take a look now at the front page of the Star. And this is the headline story. Raila's chief agent, I did mention their editorial cartoon and the spilt beans. Raila's chief agent, how Uhuru men struck it rich. Kanchori describes how some bureaucrats lined their pockets during campaigns. In fact, when you flip to the story, and that is on page 4 and 5. So first of all, here is the editorial cartoon, Raila Odinga being swept away by these spilt beans out of this gunny bag, gunia. And I see Saitabao Ole Kanchori there. And surprisingly something, and this is a book in question in case you haven't had occasion to look at the cover. This is it, Why Baba is Not the Fifth. And there's an interesting paragraph here, and it details that in a tell-all tale of Raila's failed fifth presidential race, Kanchori explains that Raila's campaign machine gave Uhuru's men an opportunity to make a killing. And he describes, yes, here it is, actually the paragraph before that. Kanchori in his new book details how a visitor to a public office of one of the top government officials was shocked to walk on stacks of cash to get to the official's desk. And a quote here of Rigathi Gachagua when he revealed that money was brought in cartons from Wilson Airport and flown in choppers to people's homes. I'm curious whether advice had occasion to taste, and even Nelly kuonja hizi pesa watu walikuwa natembelea juu. Let us take a look at the Taifa Leo before we get to and look at more in depth at some of these stories. Taifa Leo, as usual, doesn't mince its words. Ukabila serikalini. Makabila matatu yashikilia asilimia 45 ya nafasi za kazi katika serikali ya kitaifa. Jamii nyingine zikimeza mate. Tuliambiwa kuna shareholder. Now, when Rigathi Gachagua was speaking in, where was that? Where was he speaking? That must have been in Malava. And he said, you know, Western Kenya can try in this coming election to match Mount Kenya's shares. When we talk of blackmail, and Kenya Kwanza consistently accuses Raila Odinga of blackmail, is that not blackmailing Kenya and Zomulo? That regardless of how I voted, and how do they know I didn't vote for Ruto? Therefore, if I come from a region that did not vote for Ruto overwhelmingly, I should pay a price. But even if I voted for Raila Odinga, is that not then blackmail? Because now you're arm twisting me, which goes against the tenets of the Constitution, to vote a certain person in if I want to benefit from development. But we'll get into that, Omula. We'll give you a chance to respond. More on this, the three Jamis that are benefiting or that have benefited greatly from government appointments, according to Taifa Leo, zingine zikimeza mate, is Kikuyus. We just grab my hard copy here. So Kikuyus 20%, Kalenjin 17.22%, and Kisii 7.39%. So this says jamii zinazowakilishwa serikalini na watu wengi kupita kiasi, and then jamii ambazo hazijawakilishwa serikalini ipasavyo: Waluya 11.88%, Mijikenda 3.31%, Waturkana 0.75%. Jamii zilizo na idadi ndogo zaidi ya uwakilishi serikalini, this is Kenyan Somalis, this is 2.7%. I won't get into those other details so that you have reason to purchase your Taifa Leo, be it on ePaper.nation.africa or your hard copy from your newspaper vendor. You can be assured you will not be disappointed. Utumishi wa umma, jamii tatu nchini zimebainika kuwa na uwakilishi mkubwa zaidi ndani ya serikali na kuashiria ukosefu wa usawa wa uwakilishi wa makabila katika utendakazi wa umma. Ripoti mpya imebainisha. Mwenyekiti wa tume ya utumishi wa umma Anthony Mushiri akihutubia waandishi habari afisini mwake kwenye picha ya awali. They've also highlighted that maandamano yaja Ramadhani kiisha. Odinga asema maandamano yatafanyika sambamba na mazungumzo. And then KTDA yarejeshea wakulima pesa. Hii ni kufuatia shinikizo za wakulima za kudai pesa zilizokatwa kununua mbolea. So that is front page of Taifa Leo. Let's now take a look at the Business Daily, and I think with that we'd have pretty much looked at all the front pages. As I mentioned, this has to do with the dollar. Watchdog starts probe on banks for dollar price fixing. CAK to establish if dealers shared info in chat rooms, and competition probe focuses on price bringing claims. This report is by Kefa Mwiruri. If I can just highlight what is on the front page. Forgive me, Kefa. The Competition Authority of Kenya is investigating several undisclosed banks for allegedly let me read my hard copy. The text is not so clear on my screen. For allegedly fixing foreign exchange rates. Foreign exchange trades, adding a fresh twist to the crisis that has seen lenders run out of dollars on some days. The Antitrust Authority says, quote, investigations are ongoing into the possible manipulation and collusion over the dollar exchange rate, exposing bankers to fines and up to 5 years in jail if convicted. Sources familiar with the probe reckon CAK is pursuing allegations that some dealers at the banks of used electronic chat rooms have used electronic chat rooms and instant messaging to coordinate their trading activities when giving quotes to customers. And then I see Kenya returns to China. The headline that shares the front page there, Kenya returns to China in 38 billion shillings Kiambu dual road loan. Kenya has secured a deal for 38.3 billion for a 38.3 billion loan from China to expand Kiambu Road into a dual carriageway, making it the first major debt Nairobi will tap in the past 3 years from Beijing, that has since 2020 adopted a more cautious approach to lending in Africa. Okay, I will leave that for you to go purchase and get the rest of the details. Ticker, Kenya's economy to topple Angola. As Ethiopia grows lead, the International Monetary Fund has projected that the size of Kenya's economy will overtake Angola this year, even as Ethiopia stretches its lead. See also how Hustler Fund members will be made to pay for NHIF. The Ruto administration plans to compel Hustler Fund borrowers to enroll into the NHIF in a proposed drive to actualize the long-delayed rollout of the Universal Health Coverage Scheme. And finally, on the ticker, Kenya eyes KFC with potato seed imports. Kentucky Fried Chicken and other multinational restaurant chains will in coming years be barred from importing pre-sliced potatoes in a policy shift aimed at boosting local capacity of farmers to supply international eateries. Hiya basi. Let me catch my breath. Invite, now that we have a sense, an overall picture of what is contained in the dailies, let me catch my breath and we can get to our interrogation of some of these stories. I'll start with you. Advice, hizi pesa watu walikuwa natembelea ulikula? Ask advice.
Not really. I have not eaten any money. You can see I have not changed much. I haven't changed much. I think these are. But
what do you make of those revelations?
It is, every time you lose an election, there must be explanation. Everyone must try to come up with why we lost, especially when the hopes were so high, like what happened with us at the Azimio table. So yes, there was a bit of mistrust. There was a bit of some people not playing their role. I agree with Kanchori to a certain extent, but now the issue of money, I think that is for Kanchori to tell us where he got the money and who is this particularly who ate this money, as he puts it. But from where I sit, from the party perspective, yes, there was an intentional approach to really win the election, and people are putting in their utmost best, but there was also a lot of hiccup here and there. We had instances where our planning and coordination was not very seamless, it was not very organized, and that we have to admit. But that does not mean we agree that we lost the election. It only means, what I agree is that, yes, there was a bit of mismanagement, there was a bit of confusion within our own camp, and unfortunately that doesn't seem to have even stopped up to now. There is still, even in the running of affairs right now, as we continue onwards, you can be able to see the push and pull that is happening here and there. So yes, I agree, Olive, that there was a bit of mismanagement, perfectly, because by mere fact that our chief agent is on the front line of the complaints, it shows you that there was a bit of a problem. But again, we have to understand that every time there is an election loss, there will always be an explanation. Everybody will come up with all sorts of issues. If the Kenya Kwanza administration doesn't make it to government in the next election, you will see how Omulo will have a lot to say. He will have a lot to say about what happened, because by nature we don't quickly accept a loss. It's very natural that we don't quickly accept a loss. We will always come up with an explanation. We will always want to point a finger to blame someone else. So what Kanchori is doing, and these things that are flying around, is just that the hopes were too high, and that's why half a year down the line, we still want to have that conversation. We still are in disbelief that the election actually is over and we have a government. Everyone is in disbelief. Kenya Kwanza is in disbelief that they are a government. Azimio is in disbelief that they are an opposition. So we are generally in a situation where everybody is in disbelief of where they are. Everybody is where they did not expect to be. It's like Kenya Kwanza did not expect to be a government. Azimio did not expect to be an opposition. So I wish something would happen and flip and people change positions. I think we'll be more comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you saying, you say people don't easily accept losses?
Yeah.
Are you saying Raila Odinga should move on?
Because
you've talked about a bit of mismanagement.
Yes. There was a bit of mismanagement. That for sure was there. But I'm not saying Raila Odinga should move on. And election issues are not individual issues, because the issue about election is about the country and about the people and the millions of Kenyans who vote. So what should happen is that, since somebody is saying that we did not lose election, another one is saying we won election, the easiest thing to do, which I don't see how dramatic it should be, is if Kenya Kwanza is confident that they won, why can they as a government be able to facilitate and just open the servers and assure everybody that, you know what, these are the numbers and you lost? Because on the other side, we are saying we have a whistleblower, and the whistleblower has given us these numbers. And Omulo and his people are saying that is wishful thinking. It has never happened. So at the end of the day, we are leaving the common Mwananchi at the center stage of all this, and the common Mwananchi does not know what to believe. The answer lies in these servers. And Olive, these servers are paid for by taxpayers' money. The IEBC is sponsored by the taxpayer. Everything that happens there is sponsored by the taxpayer. I do not understand why it should be very difficult to just open those servers for this taxpayer who paid for this service to just see what happens. I don't see how difficult that should be. Actually, it would legitimize the Kenya Kwanza government even more if they really won an election and opened the servers and it's proven that they actually won. Even the confidence of the people will move quite high. Even those people who are Azimio supporters today will be more confident with them, knowing that it's true we lost and they actually won.
Okay, Omulo, I saw the beginnings of a smile when when advice conceded that there were some issues.
You see, Olive, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. We need to be truthful and to ourselves, because I believe you can see the proceeds of this money that was mismanaged. And I can say that you see Kioni is already utilizing those funds in buying soforias and also funding maandamano. So you can see the proceeds of the funds that Konchari is talking about. But, you know, Konchari is just trying to openly say what happened. In fact, yes. It's just, he has lifted the eyelid on the behind-the-scene intrigues, power struggle, fighting in the campaign center. Imagine he was not even given an opportunity to meet the presidential candidate, even to brief them on the happenings of the center. You know, the presidential candidate, who is Raila Odinga, did not even have an opportunity to visit the center and know whether my good friend Advice is really trying in that center. So it's just admitting that Raila lost. And I know it is very hard and sad to lose, but they should accept and move on. They should not now try to come up with things that are not making sense for now. But be that as it may, I believe that I've heard him talking about the server. Who is supposed to open the server? Actually, it is not the responsibility of the president or even Kenya Kwanza. He does not hold the key to those servers. I don't know whether they have written a letter, a formal letter to IEBC to facilitate the opening of the server. They need to ask themselves a question. Who is supposed to ask IEBC to open the server? It's not the prerogative of the president. It's only the judiciary that can direct IEBC to open the servers. And that opportunity was availed. They did not give any reason, and you know what happened in the Supreme Court. So they did not even apply for any redress in regards to the, you know, the detailed pronouncement by the Supreme Court. So the server issue should not be neither here nor there. It should not. It's a non-issue. It's not a national conversation that we need to have as a country. But there are more important pressing matters that we need to discuss as a country, from the cost of living that they have been talking about, which makes sense. The issues of reconstitution of IEBC, that one we can discuss. The issues of, you know, not the server, the issues of appointments, which we call the shareholding. Those are issues that we should discuss. Because you asked about the ethnic problem. You know, there's an issue.
Tutakuja hapo. We need to take a break, but Nelly will also get your thoughts on these monies people were working on, and which Rigathi Gachagua said were being flown to people's homes in cartons. Interesting story here, though, on page 8 of the Daily Nation. Governors' spouses push for fund. You know, I saw Mulo, then I remembered another spouse. The wives of governors are calling for a fund to be established to enable them support their communities. I wonder what you have to say on that. The Twitter handles are at NTV Kenya, at Obarrows. Tukutane huo upande mwingine, tukiangazia headline ni taarifa ya Taifa Leo.
You're going to take your oxtail and then you're going to brown it.
kuna kitu kama daraja hapa, sio daraja, sio culvert, ilijengwa kama mwenda simu. Mtu wenye ilijenga vibaya.
Bwana contractor mzee, mtu asikwambie kitu, hiyo bridge yako iko juu.
Yes. When I went there, people thought I was really rude, you know, because I just talk when you are Kenya tunaongea, just, but for them you have to put please before everything. And if someone is even a year older than you, you have to call them brother or sister. Like I'd call you like Brother Kingori. If I just call you.
Oya, niaje wazee watu wangu wa power, DJ Mwapa hivi kama kawaida, you know how we do it kwenye radio yako 96.3 Nation FM, where good music lives. DJ Mo, DJ Kamuzi alongside MC Jahochi, the host with the most, au sio?
DJ Kamuzi, the musical chef.
She wants to be like. Kutoka radio mtu wangu tunaingia kwenye TV na pale hivyo tunaletea ngoma zingine Ital 2, tunaletea mpaka guests all over the world kutoka Jamaica, Kenya, East Africa, name them. Ama ni aje Mo?
Yes I, na kama kawaida sisi kama Jam Down tuingia kwenye area kwenye mtaa yako mazee, Jam Down on the road mazee, tuambie ukuje wapi?
Jawochi kila sato anakuletea reggae news, what's trending.
Yeah, this and much more from 7 p.m. Nation FM.
Alafu kuanzia 10 mpaka maidha mtu wangu #JamDownKE. Awola.
Was sick and tired, then you
shauri gani kwani wewe abani kiwa na experience ya kupiga simu? Ni siku yako ya kwanza ya kupiga simu, abani harakisha mimi. Sisi ni watu wanapenda kubeleka bole bahali yake. Unafikiria mimi kutoka Wajir kutembea mpaka kuenda Isli mguu na baada na sukuma garmia ni kitu ya dakika mbili? Huwa beshianti mimi atashika simu. Bana kasirisha mimi nakuwaga mtu mbole sana.
To get Waria, dial *811*933#. Skiza na Nation.
Good morning, rise and shine. Thank you for being with us dark and early on the morning fix. My name is David UK.
And I am Mariam Bashar. This is where good music lives, and guaranteed your weekday mornings are never going to be the same again.
Wake up to the sound of David and Mariam on Nation FM.
Every single day.
They're your morning hosts with the most, bringing you the energy you need to start your day. Nation FM, where good music lives.
Let me see y'all.
Western Union is now available on Equity Mobile app and Equity Online. Enjoy Western Union services and other banking services on your Equity Mobile app or Equity Online. Equity, Karibu member.
Welcome back to AM Live. We've been joined by Askon Kamili. He is in studio youth policy analyst. This is the editorial cartoon and on the Daily Nation and informs our conversation today. Let me consult the people is Raila Odinga, and he's holding a card, but behind his back he's holding what is that? Unga, salaries, and let me see. I can't quite make out the third one. Can you see it, advice? Yes, unga, boda, unga, and salaries. I don't know what the 6 of hearts means. There's a 10 of hearts on the table. Perhaps it's just random. But this is what we'll be discussing, and that is the bipartisan talks failed? Are they failure to launch, stalled? Are they doomed to fail? We'll be getting into that, but I did promise Nelly that I will give her an opportunity to respond to the spilt beans we saw quite literally illustrated in the Star of people in the last days of President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration looting the coffers that Rigathi Gachagua now tells us are empty. What do you make of these revelations?
I'm just like going to support whatever my colleague here said. That
advice?
Yeah. You see, in an election contest, there's things come up, and I think one of the things that came up in our campaign organization is the disorganization that was there. It was kind of a push and pull between the agents and also the supporters, as well as the people who are part of the campaign team. So I think...
Just one quick second. Can you hear the music? I know it's Friday.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So I was saying that there was kind of some push and pull within the Azimio secretariat, or rather the campaign team. But I don't think whatever Kanchori is trying to... I'm really also trying to understand what he's trying to prove, because this money he's talking about, I don't really get it, because it seems like he's the only one who is aware of this money. So he really needs to tell us. Perhaps
you can't really say he's the only one who's aware.
Because he's the only one who seems to be talking about it. But you see, part of what is also leading to what Azimio is coming up with the issue of IBC, because when you look at our history, IBC has been a source of our problems come every election year. So it's also part of why the Azimio team is bringing up the IEBC issues, that if we are to really have a body that is constitutional and independent, then we need to really look at it. We need to really reconstitute it. So me, I'm just looking at it as Kanchori is just trying to be relevant. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's Nelly's assessment. Ask on Kamili. Tuambie kwa ukamilifu. Maoni yako juu ya haya maharagwe yenye yamemwagwa.
All right, first and foremost, Olive, let me say thank you very much for having us here. It's been some time since I was here last, but I'm shocked that Kanchori is getting all the punches right now, particularly I think because he appears to be against Raila Odinga. But I think I will not look at it that way. Kanchori is just one of the very many frustrated loyal supporters of Raila Odinga, particularly those who really thought this was Raila's best shot and that this was his most practicable shot at becoming the president of the Republic of Kenya. So I don't look at it as though he's trying to find some relevance in the revelations that are coming right now. Actually, what he says has been said by so many other people. The question of the money, the question of the disorganization, the question of the mismanagement of the transition between the campaigns and the election day. I mean, these are things that people have discussed. It's only that he comes out more bold, and because he was part of the kitchen cabinet of Raila Odinga, then now it gives it more weight and relevance. So Kanchori, in my view, is just one of the very many frustrated supporters of Raila Odinga, and very few who are bold enough to come out and speak, because in the previous elections, because that was the fifth shot that Raila was taking at the presidency. We've had Karoli Omondi at one point, we've had Eliud Owalo at another point, we've had Miguna at another point. So this is not something new. And my question would be, why would things be happening the very same fashion every other time? Does it mean there's some lack of seriousness at one point during the the process of the campaigns and the elections? I think that is more fundamental. And even going into the next election, then the question that should beg around Raila Odinga right now is, we've had these cases before. We've had these cases on several instances. I was just asking my senior Wafula Buke the other day that while he could have a problem with the timing of these revelations, he can't claim not to find the content of these revelations to be true, because he's on record on earlier occasions, of course, very different circumstances, making the very same allegations against people around Raila Odinga and the person of Raila Odinga himself. So while we would want to cushion Raila Odinga from the shock of his friends, fighting him at the time when he's very low and he appears to be politically down, we also have to speak facts. We also have to say the truth, that there was a lot of disorganization, not really at the campaigns. Actually, Raila's campaigns in 2022 were, in my view, among the best he's done through the number of years he's been in politics. But the transition between the campaigns and the election day were a mess, and intentionally so, and that costed him that election.
So were you a beneficiary? Because I've asked, I've asked the same of advice, so it's only fair that I ask the same of you. Were you a beneficiary of these funds? That Kanchori tells us that after Raila Odinga listed his potential cabinet or his projected cabinet, should he have secured the presidency, there were those who felt left out. Na wakaingiwa na baridi, wakasema basi this is our time to eat.
Well, I will not look at it as basic as who got what and at what point, but politically, the blunder that Kanchori tries to shed some light on is very fundamental for every politician. Look at it this way: there are a number of people who are supporting Raila with the hope of joining back the cabinet because Uhuru had directed them this was their candidate, and then suddenly, Raila picked a few and left others. You can imagine that impact on the support somebody gives you into an election. I think that was more important than who picked what money, and we all know the government was in support of that campaign. So where the government sends support, whatever support, material or otherwise, it must be real support.
Okay. All right. Advice. I did promise Omulo a chance to respond and react to the Taifa Leo headline, which is this Ukabila Serikalini, before we get now into the topic of conversation. But just briefly, all of you, on this, on what you make of this headline. Makabila matatu yashikilia asilimia 45 ya nafasi za kazi katika serikali ya kitaifa, jamii nyingine zikimeza mate. Those who've been identified as jamii zilizowakilishwa serikalini na watu wengi kupita kiasi, Wakikuyu, Wakalenjin, Wakisii, jamii ambazo wakilishwa serikalini ipasavyo, Waluya, Mijikenda na Waturkana. Advice?
I think this is actually the reality. Unfortunately, it's the reality of our country, and that is why up to today we can be able to see that yes, we have made a trial to go the devolution way, but there is still a lot of interest in the national government and the presidency because of these some of these kind of issues. You can be able to see at the top is the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin. Basically, that is because these two communities have been at the helm of our power play since independence, and that actually explains why they are then at the helm, despite the reality that they are not necessarily the majority of Kenyans. You can be able to see, because I want to believe today in this republic, the highest population should be Luyas, because even by the last statistics and survey that was done, that community was ranking quite highly. But then we can be able to see in terms of opportunities and access to opportunities in the government, it has a lot to do with who you know. It has a lot to do with who are your people in government than what it has to do with what is your qualification for you to actually earn a place in government. It has a little to do with what contribution you really have to make. It's more about who you know, and that's why you can be able to even see Olive today. There is a lot of what is now being called negotiation, lobbying. These are just nice English words to actually mean who do you know. Every time we have appointments to be made, you hear them saying we are lobbying for whatever, we are going to negotiate. They are just English adjectives, but the reality of them is that we are just saying who do you know at the helm. And it's a very sorry state of affairs. We are hoping that maybe in the new dispensation, especially with this Kenya Kwanza regime, because they came into office on the backs of the bottom-up economic model, the bottom-up agenda, the hustler, the common mwananchi. Because of that, because there was a lot of, we have to say it in reality, is that in the last election, there was quite a deviation from the tribal politics that were actually used to post-independence, especially from the Kenya Kwanza side, which really anchored themselves on the hustler narrative. I hoped that in their administration, they would anchor the administration on the same and then avoid the tribal politics. But you see, the hustler agenda was left after swearing in. I have not heard them mention the word bottom-up any other time. I have not heard the word Mamamboga any other time. There has been appointments. You saw what was called the cabinet of billionaires and millionaires. and it went back to again the same tribes. When you look at the composition of the cabinet, you'll see these two communities are still dominating. So if the two communities are dominating at the top, you don't expect anything different, because we are moving as a country using the model of who do you know and not what do you have to offer and what is your qualification. Unfortunately, I hope that we'll get to a point where we are able to turn these things around, and it should actually be a large conversation. The way we are talking about the IEBC is the same way we should be able to upscale such conversations to such a national level that then we can then have impact.
Okay, so Advice Omulo recognizes that this is historic given those who've occupied the highest office in the land. But kuliendaje na hasla? Mulituambia Kenya tumeacha mambo ya ukabila, tena kidogo mkiingia kwenye serikali mnatuambia mambo ya shareholders.
I think that was just a statement made by a senior member of this government. But the issue here is that this is a political question that has been in existence since independence. And I believe that a report was done in 2012, the NCIC report, which was done by the then chairperson, Mzalendo Kibujia, which was never implemented. It was supposed to address these issues, owing to the fact that Kenya is a multi-ethnic, society. And remember last time I said that the reason why I'm saying this is a political question, we need to change our governance structure and even how we do our politics, because in all our political parties, almost 86 of them, I said it's just an assembly of ethnicity. It starts from there. And we pay the highest premium on presidency. If your brother, if your person is not elected as a president, then you believe that you are left out. Then people start negotiating from that point. So that as much as you reward people, because loyalty is rewarded, but it should be done in a manner that reflects competency. It reflects, how people voted, because election in this country is like conducting census. Is about which community has the highest number in terms of voting, and that should not be the case. So if we change our political system, whereby we have either proportional representation system, where we allow political parties to elect presidential candidates, we'll have an opportunity even for the minority to lead this country at one point. So it will cure the issue of appointing people as a matter of political rewards, to make sure that you widen the base in terms of ethnicities, rewarding ethnicities. So in Kenya Kwanza, I've not seen that too much, even though we have been accused that certain political
Advice is giving you the side eye.
Certain communities have gotten the largest share, which is somehow is a fact, but it depends on the election pattern. So it should not be the case, and I believe it is a very, very important question, conversation that we need to have. And I want to even request my good friend Advice also to advise the former Prime Minister, who is the Azimio principal, to put this as a priority in their list of in negotiation. They should forget about the server, but this should be a very, very important issue. We should be at the forefront.
All right. Nelly, this reminds me of the tyranny of numbers. Remember that phrase? I mean, it was used quite a bit. What was it in 2017? 2013?
2013.
2013. Yeah. All right. So what do you make of this, the face of government?
I see it as actually a wake-up call. Like, we are in 2023 and we are still talking about tribes in government. I think it's high time the government prioritizes competence over loyalty. That for so long we expected something different, but now this is a new regime and we are still seeing the same things being repeated. I mean, it's high time we call them out. It's high time as a leadership in a country we get to really, he's talked of rewarding loyalty, but that shouldn't really be the case. The case should be that we are actually looking at competence over loyalty. But you see now, when we have a scenario where we are having a government that only recognizes and gets to rewards political cronies or the political elites, then that means nothing is really going to change. Because just as Advice said, it's going to now be, whom do you know? And because I helped you get here, then I'm expected to do the same for you. So I think it's high time the leadership of this nation just comes to an agreement with getting to look at competence first before even looking at rewarding loyalty. Loyalty is core in politics, but let us also get to a point where we really see the competence of what someone is bringing to the table. The value they bring to the table is what really matters. Perhaps maybe even get to reward youth, and that is why you see most of us out here as youth advocates, we are really championing for the power of what we youth can really bring to the table. Perhaps it's time maybe you give us a chance, we might surprise you.
All right. Ascon, is your last name what matters most when you're lobbying? I think that's the phraseology that was used by advice.
Yeah. My view would be a little different from my colleagues here. There has been the conversation around merit and loyalty and competency and such other things. But for me, the most foundational thing to look at when making appointments in government is one's contribution in the process of getting that government. A government is formed by the participation of the people in an election. And I've always challenged all my friends and colleagues that would be asking you are a lawyer or you're an engineer or you're a journalist, why politics? Why don't you focus on other things? Why don't you teach in the university or something like that? But we have decided to leave politics to other people and then hope that in the end, when these people transform that political participation into power, then they'll be put aside and then you're brought on board and given a chance to participate in the governance. Politics and governance run side by side. If the people we assume to be very intelligent and the people we assume to be very competent and merited to get these positions are not participating in the politics of the day, there is no chance that they'll get a chance on the table. It is just as simple as that. If you go to the US, of course, Kenya's way of politics is unique to Kenya. In the US, there's a question of Democrats and the Republicans. There's racism there. That's what carries weight in that election. If you go to other places, there's a question of religion that carries weight in that election, places like Nigeria. In Kenya, ethnicity is such a factor politically, and that we have to accept. When this number of tribes come together, they pull the weight on one side, and it becomes very difficult to beat them. So this is a form of mobilization that has been there. But also I heard from advice, and that credit goes to President William Ruto. At least for the first time in this election, we had a shift from that ethnic mobilization to something close to the economy and the cost of living. Credit goes to William Ruto, and maybe just as he says, he should try and keep at that to ensure that the conversation doesn't end there. But I mean, this election ends and the conversation ends there. This is what should be sustained going forward. We have to mobilize around issues. And also, having said that, there's a very fine line between participating in politics and being appointed in a position of authority. People want to imagine that if a Luo is appointed in a position of authority, the Luo must be this specific person. And if that specific person is not in that position of authority, then the Luo are not represented. If a Luo is appointed in a position of authority and they are not the specific Luo that they had in mind, then Luos are not represented. I mean, look at the composition of this cabinet. We have, something fairly representative of the face of the country. We have Wetangula, we have Mudavadi. I think that is quite representative of the Luo nation. If you go to the coast, we have Kingi and the rest. If you go to Nyanza, we have Owalo, Kisii. Is fairly representative. But because the people that we imagine should be representing the Luo are not on the table, then we imagine the Luo are not on the table. That is not right. We have to consider that if you are a Luo and you merit for it, it doesn't matter how big a name you are, it doesn't matter where you come from. What matters is by your ethnic extraction, you're representative of your ethnicity. And actually the conversation around being of this ethnic extraction or being of this tribal extraction is not a bad conversation. Our constitution itself recognizes it. At a specific provision of the constitution, we talk about discrimination on the basis of gender, sex, tribe and stuff like that. Actually, in some interviews and vetting in this country, we've watched live on your shows and other television networks, that part of the questions that you're asked when you're presenting yourself there is, where do you come from? What is your ethnicity? Are you Luo? Are you Luya? So it's not a bad thing. We have to look at it positively. Ethnic mobilization in the aspect or in the sense of keeping other tribes and other ethnicity aside and leaving them out there is what would be something we should call out. But look at it. You talked about tyranny of numbers. You talked about this thing being there for all through the years. I remember at one point when Uhuru was in Narok, then as president, and there was a very heated debate between him and Raila Odinga on this very question of government appointments, and it was very clear, sisi tunakula nyama, wengine watangoja kidogo. That was even then before we didn't know we were going to have this conversation now. So we have to appreciate that there is contribution in the political process. The truth of the matter is Mount Kenya contributed largely in this election, to ensure that Ruto became president. The truth of the matter is Rift Valley contributed big, in the election of William Ruto, and it is just proper that they get a good share of the government. I actually agree with what Gachagua said. People might not like it, and it's something that we should encourage Gachagua. Gachagua is somebody who can speak his mind and speak what you actually know is the truth, but you wouldn't do it. If you talk to politicians out there, what they say in the boardrooms is very different from what they say out there. What they tell you in the boardroom, is what they actually believe. What they say out there for the cameras is not what they mean, because that is what the people want to hear. But this is a person in such a high position of power and is able to speak the truth. The truth is there are people who contributed in this process. You're not going to bring somebody from the corridors of university to make them a minister in government. They did not vote in the first place. I saw Governor Simbarati the other day demanding that you have to show him that you took part in the elections, that you understand the value of elections for you to get the governor's bursary in Kisii. That is how important our people must know. You have to participate in the politics of the country for you to get the spoils of being in government.
All right, advice. Ascon tells us that Gachagua is simply being a truthful man.
Yes. I think ever since we lost the election, I told you, Olive, many of our of the Azimio supporters are still healing up to today. So when Ascon says that Gachagua talking about a government as a shareholding enterprise is about him being truthful, and then my other brother said he was just that it was just a statement. When you are a deputy president of a country, you don't make just a statement. You speak for everybody. You are a deputy president of the Republic of Kenya and not a deputy president of one tribal leaning. So it doesn't matter how politically realistic the statement is, but then it must appeal to the Rendile. It must appeal to the Mijikenda. It must appeal to that, because when Ascon talks about that, then it makes me wonder, what about that person who is very talented, he's eloquent, he has the capability, and is a Mijikenda? Are you saying that person can never be president of the Republic of Kenya just because you're saying we must be mobilized ethnically? I think as young people, it is a conversation we are supposed to start moving away from as we move into the next dispensation, because we cannot be able to say that we want to okay everything that is ethnic based. Remember, the survey that we are quoting is not talking about political appointments. It is talking about jobs in government, that is the civil service. So forget about the issue of cosmetic appointments that make governments look inclusive at the top, where you will have the president, he will appoint a different person for deputy, then we'll have the speaker and whatever, so that just at the top there is a cosmetic appeal that everyone can almost feel included. This survey is about the civil service. It is about the clerks in government. It is about the CEOs in government. It's about the administrators. We cannot be able to say that those can be political rewards. We can't say just because people voted a certain way and we have more people who voted this way, then that means they are political. Then question is, why should there be interviews? Why should these positions be advertised? If they are going to be ethnically given, then we don't need to advertise them. We don't need to, we should just be able to maybe make the advert then in one part of the country, because these are not political rewards. This is the civil service. And there we ask for qualifications. When the job is advertised on the paper, it says 2 years experience, a bachelor's degree in this, whatever in that, and all that. We cannot be able to say that only people from certain parts of the country really meet that threshold. I think that is, I wouldn't agree with that completely. At the civil service level, we must be able to put qualification ahead of the politics of the country. And remember, even in the politics of the country, and my two brothers are saying that it is about loyalty and whatever, you can't say there is no Mijikenda who supported that government. You can't say there is no whatever who supported that government. So when you say, you see, my brother is now learning to heckle from wherever he joins. So the issue is, you cannot be able to say because loyalty is rewarded, which I agree completely that in politics there must be rewards for those people who support the formation of a government. But it is wrong for us to assume that those people can only come from certain parts of the country. Because it doesn't matter whether the community in its larger sense did not support you as a government, but you really had people there who supported that government. You really had someone there who voted for that government. And even be that as it may, even as we do the political rewarding does not mean rewarding of incompetence. Because among the people who supported you, we have competent people. So we are not talking about, we are not saying as a Kenya Kwanza administration, go and start rewarding Azimio people. It's not necessary. But the issue is, among those Kenya Kwanza people, we have people who are very competent. We have the young people in Kenya Kwanza who took center stage in this campaign. They were promised a ministry of youth. It has not come to be. There has been no youth in that government. There has been, there is the office of the advisor on women affairs in the office of the president. There is no advisor on youth matters, and yet the two go hand in hand. You see, so it is about who is competent and who has been given. Just because you are loyal does not mean you deserve a chance in government. Sometimes you deserve a chance in the political rhetoric, but in the running of the country, we need people who can actually take the country forward. Not necessarily people who are loyal. We need people who can take the country forward. And among people who can take the country forward, we also have those who are loyal to you, and they also can be able to take the country forward.
All right, let me quick, because I want to move us along. Permission to move us along.
Yes.
And allow me to quickly consult my director, Jackson Derangu. He is on the other side of this earpiece. Jackson, is it possible to take the break now and then come back with this topic? Failure to launch the stalled bipartisan talks. Tupatane ho upande mwingine.
What made you decide to become a doctor?
It's because my father needed one. And you, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be happy like you.
Life insured is love assured. The London Marathon, 23rd April, live on NTV.
Mimi nilikuwa tu pale reserve. Nime-maintain, kuna fresh air, nini, na bros between peace. Alafu, imagine shemeji yangu, akakuja ametoka Nairobi, ati yenti ameomoka. Akaniambia, ati Nairobi iko vitu soft, vitu mzuri. For example, tukifika Nairobi, atanipeleka place inaitwa Village Market, tukakulia huko. Si tukapanga safari, sisi ndio hao. Tumewasili wapi? Nairobi. Guess what? Huyu mtu badala ya kunipeleka Village Market, akanirutisha Village, akanipeleka Market.
To get Market Village, dial star 812 star 799 hash. Skiza na Nation.
Goedemiddag.
Meet Terry Muku, a Kenyan who left for the Netherlands 28 years ago and now is a beauty mogul with her very own salon business in The Hague City.
You need to be a professional because the demand is high.
On our back home segment,
40% of our clientele is based in the diaspora.
Investment opportunities through Premier Realty.
This particular project, we call it Sinya Konza Estate. We also do have projects in Naivasha. This one we are calling it Pana Ranch.
This Saturday at 7:30 p.m. on NTV.
We partner with communities across all 47 counties by advancing education, by enhancing healthcare, by supporting economic opportunities. Because when we unite, there's nothing we can't do.
My baby is famous for her happy dancing moves because she's always happy. What's the reason for this happiness? Molfix dryness. It's what all mothers dream of. Come on, mothers, try Molfix baby diapers and be part of our happiness movement.
Western Union is now available on Equity Mobile app and Equity Online. Enjoy Western Union services and other banking services on your Equity Mobile app or Equity Online. Equity, Karibu member.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. With me in studio, we have Ascon Kamili Youth Policy Analyst Nelly Chepkemoi, ODM Youth Leader Mondalo Advice, National Youth Chairman Jubilee Party, and Omulo Junior Director Political Affairs ANC. I want us to get into this failure to launch stalled by partisan talks, but during the break, advice was advised by Ascon that there is indeed a youth advisor. Perhaps can give us more detail on that later, but let's get into this failure to launch these stalled bipartisan talks. When you look at I believe it was the front page of the Star that had two images, including this image of Raila Odinga, Eugene Wamalwa, Martha Karua and others at Ufungamano, and they quote heeded the CSO encouragement to resume demonstrations. That is one of the interpretations I have glanced at here in these dailies. And I don't know, looks like they're either standing up for the national anthem or the Giuliani song, you know, the Sita Simama Movu Yaki Tawala. So tell us, advice, your thoughts on resumption of Maandamano running concurrently with the bipartisan talks, because Opio Wandai, when he said you can we switch the music off, please? Thank you. When Opio Wandai was talking about we can chew gum as we scale stairs, he was referring to it's possible to have a conversation in Parliament and outside of Parliament. But as regards a return to the streets, your view, advice?
I think, Olive, on this issue, it is an issue that, first of all, we have to look at the genesis of how did we come to the issue of the bipartisan talks. The bipartisan talks were called by the president. And in all fairness to Raila Odinga, he responded positively by giving it a nod and accepting that, yes, we can be able to have these bipartisan talks. But then I think it started moving towards a wrong direction once now it moved from the top leadership to now the middle level, the politicians and that. Because there has been a very intentional approach from the Kenya Kwanza side to take very hardline positions. We have seen them talk about, trash the talks, talk about who should be there and who should not be there. They have done this across the weekend, across Easter. That is what they were talking about. So you can be able to feel like Azimio is right to feel like there is no goodwill for these talks. And that is the reason why Azimio is heading back, is choosing to do the talks together with something else. It's essentially to mount enough sufficient pressure, because they are so aware that the goodwill for these talks is not very forthcoming. Because you look at it, and truthfully, the pressure and the person who has actually raised the tensions more in regard to the talks has been the Kenya Kwanza side more than the Azimio side. We've seen the majority leader speak very vehemently about this, trashing the talk, saying what we will not discuss and what we will discuss, saying this will be the issue and this other one will not be the issue. But the question is, the person with the issue is Azimio. The person who is complaining about stuff is Azimio. And therefore, you cannot be able to call somebody on the table and then determine for them what issues they should be able to bring to the table, and yet that person is the one complaining. Because we cannot now be able to have Kenya Kwanza now also having issues to also discuss. The person who has been pushing and having demonstrations and Maandamano has been Azimio. When the president said, okay, let us have a conversation, the administration should be able to know that we are going to have a conversation about these issues that they have been raising. But then we have been able to see the goodwill has not been very forthcoming. You can be able to see the trash talking it left, right, and center. And that is the reason why Azimio feels there will be the talks, but then there will also be consultative meetings across the country with the people, because at the end of the day, sovereignty actually lies with the people. And then there will be this. So I have no problem with the direction that Azimio has taken in terms of continuing to talk to the people and in terms of continuing what they were doing in line with this, because the goodwill has not been very, very sufficient. And that puts us at a very bad place as a country, because at the end of the day, every other crisis that has ever been there in the world, from the World War to even our post-election violence that was very bad in 2007, all these issues have been resolved through talks. And this was a very good place for us to start. When the president said it's fine, now we can talk. The president accepted that now we can have a conversation. I wish the leaders, the political leadership, the members of parliament and everybody would go with the same tone that the top two leaders had, because the person giving this a problem is not necessarily the top leadership. It is the middle-level leadership. And you see, most of the time, Olive, we have people who benefit from a crisis. We have people who actually do not want these talks to happen, because once the talks happen, their political fodder is taken away from them. Their political capital is taken away from them. We have someone who supports President William Ruto, who makes mileage and only makes sense to his people because his work is to insult Raila Odinga. We have another person on the other side who only makes sense because when he goes to his people, you insult the president, President William Ruto, and then you get re-elected. So the moment there are talks that will be able to bring the tensions down, some people feel their political leverage is taken away from them. And that is where the problem is. I wish the two top leadership really were able to see things that way and be able to scale a formula that can be beyond that. Everyone should be able to call down their troops. If we need to have a conversation, then let us have the conversation through the talks and not in funerals. The problem with us, Olive, is we put up a team to go and have talks, but then we talk more in the funerals. We talk more in places where we are not supposed to be talking. That's where we talk more.
Thanksgiving services.
And doing Thanksgiving services. 8 months down the line, Olive, you wonder what we are thanking people for. Because right now, people don't need thanks. They need the best thanks government can be giving the people right now is reduced cost of living. That is a good thank you note. The bottom-up economic model. That will be a good thank you note. Not just necessarily going to them and reaffirming to them that we are happy that you voted for us and you are part of the shareholders. I think that is not where we should be as a country. And so these talks should be able to be, I wish they were fruitful, but then the way the things are going, you can be able to see there is not much goodwill. And everyone is now pushing left, right, and center. And now Azimio has been able to appoint more people onto whatever, the joint secretary, yes, and whatever.
What was it? Assistant counsel or something
Assistant
like that.
Counsel.
Makau Mutua, and yes.
Which, in my view, it is not necessarily about how many titled people we are going to have on these talks. It is about the intention we are having on these talks. So we might go around and have cosmetic titles here and there. We have had that before. So the intention of the talks is what is supposed to matter the most.
All right, Omulo, speaking of adjectives, because earlier at the very start, Advice had talked about English adjectives. Some English words which were used yesterday by Eugene Wamalwa were contempt and bad faith. And he says that is how Kenya Kwanza has approached these talks. And he says this has been evidenced because the tone coming out of what he may refer to it as middle level, but right from the top, he says, even in referencing Raila Odinga, apart from when William Ruto was at State House and referred to him as my brother, did he call him my brother or my friend, Raila Odinga? They are still, the Kimani Ichung'was of this world, the Rigathi Gachagua, are still talking down to Raila Odinga. Should the tone not have changed?
I think, Olive, my good friend Advice and his team should come to the table with a clean hand. Because I think the president took a very, very bold step to ensure that he has listened to the issues raised by the opposition, and he gave that opportunity through parliament so that we can have a bipartisan dialogue. You know, I don't know why these people feel that Kenya Kwanza has taken the hard stand, whereas we only have proposals. From the other side, they have only selected 7 members. We have also given 7 members. They are not yet, we have not yet formed a committee, because that committee can only be formed. We must have a legal mechanism of forming a committee within Parliament. And that should be done in a straight-jacketed dictates of the Parliament.
Is that a delay tactic? Because that's one of the accusations that has been leveled.
This is a parliamentary process. That's why the leader of majority in Parliament and even minority will move a motion. They invoke the standing orders and even other relevant laws to introduce this committee, because it's going to be a joint committee, an ad hoc committee that will, you know, operate within Parliament. So the committee is not yet, you know, formed. We have not yet tabled the issues that are supposed to be discussed. Because first of all, the moment the committee is formed, that is now when we'll start with the preliminary issues about these are the issues that we need to discuss, these are the issues that we don't need to discuss. We'll also give an opportunity for the public, the civil society, to give their views under Article 108 or public participation. So the issue, the contention here with the opposition is that they want an extra parliamentary process, which of course will be extrajudiciary, because who will convene that meeting? How will that talk be guided outside the law? So the president is simply saying that let us have these issues addressed within the framework of the law. And these issues, if you look at them, something that is coming prominently is about the server. The cost of living is not even coming out even after the pronouncement by the president and even the response by the opposition leader. They left that issue. It is now about the server.
Although it's back on the table now.
It is back on the table, but it is not a priority to them. And you see, to me, looking at what these people are saying, the moment you see Raila Odinga accepting to call off, you know, the maandamano or picketing, I think he also took a very bold step, and we need to commend him on that. But I think he's also feeling pressure on these people who feel that they also want an opportunity, because I think that there's a hidden interest in terms of what needs to be brought on the table. It's no longer about the issues, it's about you know, joining Kenya Kwanza government. And there are also ramifications and consequences of handshakes, and you've seen it in the last government. So they should come on the table with clean hands and allow this process to start, so that they can get, people will make, you know, political statement, because in any negotiation table, you know, people have to take headlines, both sides of the opposition and also in Kenya Kwanza government. But the moment they sit on the table, they agree on the issues, I think they will come to a middle ground, or the issues that need to be discussed. I think they have issues that they have raised. We also have issues that we need to be implemented. They also, civil society or the public also have issues that they need to be implemented. So this is a national conversation. So they need to tell us whether the issues that they are raising are genuine, or whether they want to introduce a new BBI. If it's about a referendum, then it is within the law, under Article 255, 257, 257. It is laid, the procedure is there. So they can initiate the process without even, you know, disturbing, you know, Kenyans. So they should be genuine enough, accept what George Saitoti once said, that the country is bigger than individuals. And if we want to unite this country, let us not do or come up with activities that will destabilize the country. Let us be genuine enough and give dialogue a chance. Let these 7 members, both sides, sit down. Let them come up with the issues. Let us interrogate these issues if they are very, very important to be listened to. That is what I can say.
All right, I saw Ascon Kamili furiously scribbling in a red pen, but before in a red biro.
In the Obama line. because I like it because it's really light in my hands.
Okay, and so we'll come to you in a moment. But first, Nelly, what Omulo is saying, that Azimio, and you're a member of ODM, you're a youth leader in the ODM party, are not coming with clean hands on the table. When the Kenya Kwanza 7 aside, because that's what I've seen them being called, the 7 asides. When they held a press conference and we heard from the majority leaders in the National Assembly and in the Senate, Kimani Ichung'wah asked, well, what does William Ruto have to do with the SAVA? He said, if you want the SAVAs open, go back to the Supreme Court, ask for a review of their decision on the SAVA. Cost of living, they've told us, unga has come down. I looked at today's paper. I saw certain brands are now retailing, and they said the same thing, between 180 and 190. So, bei ya unga wanasema imeshuka. So they're saying the only issue on the table really is the reconstitution of IEBC. Are you, why in there, they're asking, why are you making unrealistic demands, if not for a share of government?
Okay, so I'm looking at it this way. My good friend Omulo is saying that Azimio is not raising issues, but I think for them, they're deciding to just choose an issue that they should talk about. Because when you look at some of the issues being raised by Azimio, they are quite pertinent issues that really touch on the Mwananchi, the Mama Mboga down there. So we have the cost of living, we have the reconstitution of the IEBC, we have certain issues that are coming up. But
okay, when you say cost of living, I know they've talked about reinstitution of the subsidies, but then their argument is how many billions are now unaccounted for. I think they said 34 billion shillings are unaccounted for. So they said that is not the route we want to take. And I mean, is it not the prerogative of the Kenya Kwanza administration to address the cost of living how they see fit?
Okay. You see, you cannot talk about you've lowered the cost of living. People are still crying out. Kenyans are still crying out. You and I feel the pinch outside here that, you see, we were looking at the unga price, but that is just unga price for Naivas that has had a discount. But down there towards the shops down there, how many Kenyans are really able to really even afford that discounted price? So me, I see it as the issue of cost of living has not really been handled well, because we are having, it is quite concerning because when the president called for bipartisan talks rather, you have now the political class coming up and starting to come up with kind of a rhetoric that, or rather a narrative where they are, when they go outside there, they start saying that Azimio just wants to be part of the government. They're just trying to raise up issues of them coming up with a handshake. Our party leader, Raila Amolo Odinga, has restated so many times that he's not interested in any shareholding or being part of any handshake in the government. He just wants the issues of Kenyans to be handled. And now when you see my friend advice say that Azimio is coming up to tell you people that this is what we need. So if we are the ones complaining, why should you, and you've invited us to come and sit and talk to you, why then should you give us an ultimatum that you only want to discuss issues to do with IEBC? Kenyans don't want to listen to that. As much as it is important, we also need to look at the issue of the cost of living. Looking at the issue of IEBC, as I said earlier on, part of, when you look at the history of our elections, IEBC has been the source of majorly the problems that we experienced during the elections time. So it's also time we look at it and reconstitute it, because it will determine how we will engage with the elections moving forward. Now back to maandamano. We must also acknowledge that maandamano, or rather the picketing, is quite a legal and a formal way of communicating with the government. So I don't see any issue when there's talks and when there's also the demonstrations. I mean, people are still exercising their democratic right. It is still a legal and a formal way of communicating with the government. This will also insert the pressure to make the government work. Otherwise, we are telling them that if you don't see the need to work for Kenyans, it is 8 months down the line. We are still having endless talks by the regime about inheriting a bandaged economy. But you see, you keep talking about this and you're not doing anything. Then it's time you should be reminded that if this is going to work, if this is what will make you start working, then let us go to the streets. If that is what we will take to make you work for Kenyans, then so be it. Otherwise, get out of the way and give space to people who want to work for Kenyans.
Okay. Yeah. I talked earlier of contempt and bad faith. I'll pull 2 more words out of the dictionary, and not words necessarily, but phrases that have been used. Economic saboteurs and anarchy.
Wow.
That is how Kenya Kwanza views these demonstrations that Azimio has called for. I'll ask you your view on another word, blackmail.
Amazing. I think that's a very weighty, I mean, it's a very interesting choice of words there. And they speak to the position taken by either sides of the political divide. You know, if you look at the Kenya Kwanza, they have a way they view the other side. If you look at Azimio, there's a way they view the other side. But at the outset, let me, you know, say that I would be the last person to dismiss any conversation that brings people together. Even here, we are seated because we are having a conversation. When people sit and talk, you know, things work better. When you stop talking, you begin to fight, basically. So the approach of bringing people together, having heads together, and people having a conversation on issues that actually affect each and every one of us is something that we should encourage. And then considering that the president extended an olive branch to the opposition to sit and have a conversation, I think that's something we need to give a pat on the back to the president, and also to the opposition leader who, you know, accepted this invitation with very warm hands. Is a very good thing. Is something that we need to encourage over and over. But what are the boundaries within which these conversations should happen? My question would be, for how long will we be having conversations on specific issues? How long have we discussed the IBC? How long have we discussed the question of, you know, the process of election? How long have, I mean, these are things that have been recurring in each and every other election. I remember what birthed the BBI because I was very part and parcel of the process. I remember what brought the talk of Okoa Kenya. I remember what brought the, I mean, it's always been there.
But
so the question
shouldn't it take as long as it takes?
No, no. The question would be, why do we keep on having these conversations?
Why not?
When we address them, the real issues, then now we won't be, you know, disturbed with having this conversation every other election. My question again is, we have institutions of governance that have been established by the Constitution that are supposed to handle these issues. We have the Supreme Court that has been given the authority by law to look at our electoral process, particularly the election of the president of this country. There are specific timelines, which is not very normal in almost every other, you know, judicial procedure. You know, there are specific timelines to when these issues should be dealt with and what is the extent to which these issues can be dealt with. My question is, if we are not going to respect what the Supreme Court says, then which institutions of governance should we look at when we have challenges and troubles? If we don't believe that the Supreme Court can make a decision and a determination on a matter, and that decision should stand, when will we give a chance to our institutions of governance to grow? If you go to the US, there was a similar problem. You know, we use US most of the time because we consider it an advanced democracy. I did not see the opposition then, while it was a very heated election where we saw people, you know, going to the most noble of areas of governance in the country. I mean, we didn't see what is happening right now. If we are going to dismiss the Supreme Court and say that what the Supreme Court determined in the last election does not matter, we need to have a conversation and come up with what we think is right. I don't think that's the right way of doing things. We need to give a chance to our institution. Actually, I'm taken aback by the fact that Raila Odinga's history as a revolutionary and as a politician has been the fight for the, you know, institutions of governance. I remember when the Supreme Court had its first judges, there's a real debate, you know, between Kibaki and Raila Odinga on how the appointments were made, on why consultations were not done, and on what basis the Supreme Court will be operating. We had the IBC, the commissioners, the chair of the commission, how to appoint the CEO. These are conversations we have had over and over. Actually, the conversation on the IBC today, I don't understand where it stems from, because the law is actually in place. We have a high court determination on how this matter should be done. But also considering the politics around it, I think it is good to invite opposition so that they can have a conversation, because they are players, to ensure that the process of selection of the IBC commissioners is seamless and is perfect. But that does not mean the process that is established in the law should be discarded completely, and that we go back to what we call our boardroom discussions. If we are going to always have boardroom discussions on issues that even the law speaks about, then I think we shall have lost it as a country. Secondly, we are talking about the particular issues that the bipartisan talk is supposed to address. Let us look at the question of the cost of living. I am not very sure the cost of living is among the priority issues that are on the table. Actually, the conversation between the president and the opposition leader ended in press conferences. I didn't hear that come out very explicitly, as it were, on the streets, that the question of cost of living was that pertinent. Actually, it took a journalist to remind the opposition team that part of the reason why a good number of people were in the streets was because of the question of the cost of living. But what informs this cost of living? We have unga, which, you know, every Kenyan believes that when the cost of unga goes down, then the cost of living has gone down. It doesn't matter whatever thing happens. For them, the cost of unga is down, everything is okay. Now ask yourself, I've been to the supermarket myself, I've been to the shops myself. It is actually true. That is the truth of the matter. It is actually true that the cost of unga has gone down substantively. What would be the question is this going to be sustained into, you know, the coming months and the coming years? The other question is a question of oil. We have seen oil and fuel. We have seen the president and his team do something about it. Actually, it was all over the news yesterday, and that is something that provoked my mind, how they thought about it, and, you know, the
government arrangement.
Yeah, the proposal. I mean, I can see that the government is trying to do something about it. When you're elected in office, it is your responsibility to come up with ideas and policies of how to run that government. If we are going to compel Kenya Kwanza government to use the policies and ideas of the Jubilee government and the Uhuru government, then there would be no point of elections. We give them a chance to run the government in the fashion they think would serve the purpose in which and the pledges they made in the campaigns. And if that fails, then we go back to an election. They are put to task to explain why they didn't achieve it, and we elect another government. But we can't keep praying that a government that is in place fails, so that the people think that actually we were right. That is not how to do it. When Obama was here the last time, he was very clear about it. You cannot, our opposition politics cannot be entirely about wishing that your government fails. When your government fails, your country fails. And lastly, I'm wondering about the composition of the bipartisan team. The Jubilee, I mean, the Kenya Kwanza government had their team, you know, the leaders in parliament, and Azimio had the team, the leaders in parliament. I saw my friend Babu Owino complain very bitterly that, you know, the young people of the Azimio side were not considered. And that's a complaint that we've had all through the years. It's something very important that I think the opposition should consider going forward. I saw Kenya Kwanza had 3 young people under the age of 35. On our side, I think there's this still primitive thinking that young people do not deserve a chance on the table. What is important is once somebody is elected as leader, whatever opportunity that comes should be availed for everybody. And that is a challenge to advise and my brothers on that side. But let me just finish. Let me just finish. The reason why people are elected in parliament is because we actually trust in their capacity to represent us. You know, the Constitution actually provides that we can exercise our authority directly or indirectly through our representatives. The bipartisan approach brings together members of parliament who we believe have capacity because they were elected to canvass and to have conversations that can be representative of our interests. The Azimio side has their representatives. Why is it that they don't really believe that their representatives can actually carry the conversation properly and make things work for us? In my view, I think these bipartisan talks should have been given a chance. We had these same talks on the IPC when Kiraitu and Orengo committee was formed, you know. You remember that happened as well? We are going to have this conversation until probably 2050 or 2070. That is given. But we should give a chance to our leaders in parliament to have this conversation. Revolutions have moved from the streets to the boardrooms. Okay. We can't keep on having revolutions in the streets. If you look at the streets in South Africa when Malema was doing his picketing, it was far different from what we had in Kenya. If you look at France, far different from what we had in Kenya. If you look at Nigeria, I mean, Kenya still appears as the most primitive, you know, way of picketing. We have clear ways of doing picketing, of demonstrating. We should go back to that and ensure that what we do does not hurt the economy, does not hurt the country.
All right, so we have a minute each to wind up, so I'll give each a minute. Advice, what is left on the table? Cost of living is being addressed. Sava, I mean, what does that really have to do with President William Ruto, if we are being honest?
But even before advice goes, if the servers are to be opened, sorry, you just reminded me something very important. Uhuru was president for 3 months before Ruto took power. Uhuru was in Azimio. I challenge them that Uhuru should have opened the servers if it is not for, if it is not about the Supreme Court ordering for opening of the servers, and then that we believe that the president should be doing this. Like now we are demanding that Ruto does it. Uhuru should have done it in the first place.
All right. Yes. So what is left on the table? Because even on the reinstatement of the IEBC commissioners who resigned, Kimani Ichung'wah asked on what legal basis these people resigned. This one was removed through a constitutional process. What is left on the table?
Thank you, Olive. I think I have listened to Ascon speak for quite a number of minutes, and one of the things I liked is when he pointed out on the problems in Azimio, he said on our side. So I think we are steps in the right direction. So on the question of the server, first of all, nobody has asked the president to open the server. I don't know why that keeps being peddled around, and friends on the other side keep saying Azimio is saying the president should open the server. The president, the Azimio is saying the president should open the server. Nobody has asked the president to open the server. What is happening is Azimio is saying IEBC open the server. Kenya Kwanza administration have the goodwill that the server can be opened. Remember, IEBC exists as a government. IEBC does not is not something foreign. It is part of government. So what we need is the goodwill. We need the goodwill that Kenya Kwanza should also. Why can't they also tell the IEBC to open the server? We need them to also tell the IEBC to open the server. Far from what the Supreme Court said, we are at the point where all that is Azimio is saying, we have new evidence after the Supreme Court. We have a whistleblower after the Supreme Court. Now, what Kenya Kwanza simply needs to do, because for us to be able to really justify to the Azimio person that you actually lost election, why can't both players say, okay, IEBC, open the server? Only one player is willing to have the server open, and that is why his supporter is wondering, why isn't this other person so willing?
Okay.
Yeah, now, on the issue of, I've seen Ascon really compare and say we should talk. We should stop talking and stuff like that. The issue is, you cannot compare the democracy of Kenya to the US. The US is having their 46th president, and their democracy has grown that far. And therefore, we must be able to understand that our country, as it stands now, we will continue having conversations until things get okay. And lastly, because I know you want to cut me short, there was something about the young people being involved in the talks in Azimio. I totally agree that, and that's, you remember when I started, I said there was a problem in the Azimio election day. And there has still been a problem up to today on some issues. And that's why you can be able to see, even up to now, we still have teething problems. For instance, the young people have not been involved in the selection panel. Apart from the young people, the political parties have not been taken seriously. Jubilee as a party is a party in Azimio. But you see, Azimio is complaining that Honorable Adan Keynan has been put on the Kenya Kwanza side. But the question is, did Azimio, because it named the list first, and on the list of Azimio, 99% of those people who are selected are ODM. But then, when another person gives their chance to Jubilee, Azimio starts complaining. And those are the teething problems within Azimio. As you look at it, the only political party actively taking part in all Azimio activities is ODM. The other political parties only have their political party leaders taking part, and not necessarily the political party. And that is a problem that should be addressed.
Okay, you've made Omulo very happy. Nelly, 30 seconds. Amekula muda wako. 30 seconds, 30 seconds. Okay,
so my issue will be on the representation, the parliamentary aspect. And I'm happy Mr. Ascon talked about it. He talked about the representation in parliament, the parliamentarians being able to address the plight of Kenyans. But this is my issue, and this is also why, as Azimio, I don't know why my colleague here is saying that Azimio has now become an ODM affair, when it's clearly we have Martha Karua, we have Kalonzo.
Political party leaders.
I mean, they're already represented, they speak for the parties.
On the committee, though, he is right, the majority are ODM.
Okay, so now my point is, this is why we are saying, this is why we are saying that we are seeing like a lack of seriousness in these talks, because when he's talking about representation of people, I'm seeing a cannibalization of legislation or opposition legislators. You're bringing in Aden, we see it as a sign of bad faith. You see, because there's already cannibalizing of legislators in parliament.
I've run out of time.
Okay, sorry.
Yes. Omulo, last but very quickly, why are you afraid of an audit of the electoral process? William Chebukati claimed, Wafula Chebukati claimed, because William Ruto was accused of being IBC spokesman at Chebukati spokesman at a certain point. Anyway, Wafula Chebukati at a certain point claimed there were even attempts at abduction. Why not audit the electoral process?
It is not our work. Let them write a letter to IBC. Let them wait for the formation of the commissioners. They can do it formally. They request the court to do it. So as we are focusing on developing this country, we have a new plan to work with. And the reason why I was laughing, these people should not leave Raila alone. Raila has really worked for this country. He's actually advocating for this bipartisan dialogue. These people are just hanging on his coat. They are not adding any value. Let them also just work on the opposition.
All right, thank you very much. ASCON Kamili Youth Policy Analyst, Nelly Chepkemoy, ODM Youth Leader. Mundano Advice, National Youth Chairman, Jubilee Party, and Omulo Junior Director, Political Affairs. We'll be posting this show on YouTube, so if you enjoyed it, be sure to rewatch it, and you'll find it there. Have a good morning. My name is Olive Barrows.